Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to yet again another episode, the 23rd, in fact, of hopefully many episodes of Bard Advice, a D&D/RPG/life advice podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, however you may know me, I do my best to answer those questions. Hope everybody's doing well and has had a good week. Chris, Avram, Bean, Rocco, hello. Thank you for joining this evening. Hope that you're having as good of a day as you can, wherever you are, wherever you're listening. Hey, River, how are you? Oh, also, River, quick note, just so you know, I'll be up and about and messing around with lore and stuff after this, so just in case you maybe want to make some stuff, I think I finally finished my timeline. All right, so let's get into some things. I don't have an art corner this week. However, I do have something that I'd like to get into later towards the end of the episode today. So that said, we will skip over art corner and we'll be getting right into questions momentarily. Before we do that, let's just, as we do at the top, remind everybody to please send all questions, complaints, comments, queries, concerns to bardadvice@gmail.com. Also looks like bardadvice. Oh, also, don't mind the Gorbachev-esque mark that I've got on my head here. I had something fell on me in the garage, so that's there. Although it looks a lot better than it did a couple of days ago. So bardadvice@gmail.com for your questions, or bardadvice, however you can remember it. Send things there. Also, you can get merch at manschwartz.com. And on that note, I did have a meeting with Kraken this week. It went well. It does appear that we're going to be looking to design some more dice. So no dates on that. I'm not sure when it will happen, but that conversation has been started. So that's good news. And also, if you want to contribute to anything that I do musically, you can do so by contributing to my Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App, all of which are Yazik, Yahzick. I am currently at work in the lab working on the third album, Organized Lightning. Also, please, yes, thank you for the reminder there, Heartless. Remember to hit like, please. The likes are appreciated. It's helpful. It's good for the algorithm. All the comments, all the patrons, super chats are super appreciated. Whenever, however you can do that, whatever you're able to do, it's always appreciated. That stuff really helps. So thanks for all the contributions. Also, the members and buying the memberships gets you these cool icons and images that you can post. So that's pretty neat. And I made all of those, by the way. I made those myself years ago. Those little images that you can use. So that's kind of neat. So that seems to be, I think, everything for the housekeeping end of things, just telling everybody what to do and where to go. Let's get into it. As I said, that there is no art corner this week, but I did want to. The first question is not for everybody, but it's one that I'm excited to get and to talk about briefly. And then also we've got some extra stuff towards the end that is, it's not really a follow-up, but it's interesting, cool, fun stuff. So let's dive right into this first question, shall we? It is not D&D related. I'll give everyone a heads up, but don't worry, this will be brief. Have you always been a Jaguars fan, and are you excited about the upcoming season? I'm very excited. I've always been a fan. I've been a fan since we expanded back in the day. In fact, I think my grandmother moved to Jacksonville like the year or the year before the Jags expanded. So I indeed was a fan. In fact, I had a Jaguars starter jacket, one of those starter coats back in the day in Oklahoma. And I remember getting teased because the kids were like, what is that? The Jaguars? That's not a team. They're not a real team. Because they barely had existed. And then there was, those first couple of years, we were awesome and great and had stuff like, with Tom Coughlin and Tony Baselli and et cetera, Mark Brunell. And then it was like 25 years of heartache. And then 6 years ago, we had a shot. Miles Jack wasn't down. for the record. And lately, it looks like we're going to have a chance. So I was looking at our schedule. I don't see us not going at least 10-6. Or excuse me, rather 10-7, if not 11-6. A lot of these are W's. A lot of these are wins. So I'm excited. Thank you, everyone, for putting up with me there for a few minutes while I spoke about the Jaguars. I know that not everyone here is a football fan or cares, but, you know, we might actually do really, really well this year. In fact, I do believe that we're going to dominate our division. I don't see anybody else messing with us in the AFC South. And honestly, I'm not too worried about the AFC in general, except for the Chiefs, and we only lost to them by a touchdown last playoffs. So we shall see. You prefer college ball? Yeah, that's fair. College ball it's a different game. I think it's faster paced, and I think there's more quote unquote heart in it, maybe. I don't know. But let's not keep talking about sports. I just wanted to knock that first question out of the way. As I said, we didn't have an art corner plan for this week, and I've got some other stuff I want to talk about later. So, and that question was from Clayton. So thank you for the question, Clayton. Heard it here first, Jags, for the Super Bowl. I'll take it. I really believe it. A couple of different things went a couple of different ways in that Chiefs game, we might have been in the Super Bowl last year. So, and that was, you know, we really only adjusted and got it together. You know, Trevor really only started getting real consistent like week 9. So if he can do that from the beginning this time, yeah, it's going to be fun. All right, so let's move on to a question that is indeed about Dungeons and Dragons. You know, we ask those here on this thing from time to time on this podcast. This question is from Sam. Sam asks, love the podcast. Thanks for all the funny. I recently saw D&D Honor Among Thieves for the first time. I know, finally. I was curious as to your thoughts on a D&D Cinematic Universe and what that might look like. Keep up the bardadvice. Now, I haven't watched the movie for a second time yet, although I intend to. You know, it's on Paramount Plus now, so it's just at your streaming convenience. I imagine more people have seen it. I don't know. I'd be curious to see how many more people have seen it. I went to the theater, which is surprising. I guess it's not that surprising. I really should have gone and seen it in theaters for my job. And, I did. But most of the time, I usually am that guy, come to think of it, who just, let's not go. Let's just wait until it's available for stream. But it's available for stream now. And you asked about a cinematic universe. I definitely think that they're going to make more movies. I don't know what their plans are in terms of making a second film and what that might look like. In my notes, well, first let's look at the characters here, because these are our characters. And this is actually some sort of a drawing. Maybe this was, I don't know actually who made this, but it's pretty cool. These are our characters, right? So we've got our bard, Barb, the barbarian, the druid, the sorcerer, the paladin, and the rogue. So I think that the second one might still be like an ensemble movie. I would say that I would do like an escape plot for the second film. So in the second film, maybe that's how you get them all back together, is that they're captured, and so then they have to get out of this place. That'd be pretty cool. Alternatively, they could do what Marvel did and what Nintendo very well might do, and just start throwing out individual films. In which case, I think the move would be to start with the Paladin. I think that his moments were some of my favorite, and he was the character that I was interested to know the most about. And a lot of that might be credit to the actor, but that's, at least for me, as I was introduced to and spent time with the characters in the film, I want to know more about that guy. I need to know that guy's whole story and what he's about. So, I don't know. Let's see what chat says. Hey, Jason, how are you? Like to see, but as Empire Strikes Back beginning, the good guys lose, come back for the next one. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, maybe you capture them at the end of the second, and then the third is the escape. Hugh Grant's always a good thing. Yeah, I thought he did well. Drist, but with Salvatore's approval. Yeah, I have good feelings about the Netflix adaptation of One Piece because of Oda's heavy involvement. I think that makes a big difference. And I've spoken about this. I've spoken about it before on this podcast, but I've read somewhere that they had some real rules lawyers and some real lore keepers involved in this movie. So a lot of the stuff is, I'm sure there's probably been a few changes here and there, but a lot of the stuff is mechanically correct. Elric of Melnbone movie series. Since it's a reboot of the series, it only makes sense. The Paladin was thrown together after the Dritz line got nixed. Ah. Okay. Well, they are doing this fast thing, and I don't know why I'd never heard of that before. I felt like such a fuddy-duddy. Listening back to that episode, I was like, what in the hell am I talking about? But their new channel, yeah, that'd be a good place to do something like that. Florida Man episodes are the best, thank you. Hughes' interviews gave off the vibe that he was only in it for the money and might not be interested in sequels. Yeah, maybe, but hey, in it for the money. That movie, they made a bunch, yeah? What they box? Let's take a look. Well, D&D Hatbox, I guess, is not very helpful. Among Thieves box office. Forgive the typing. 92 million. 200 million worldwide. It's pretty good. It's a pretty lot of money. And if he does a residual deal, there might be more there if people continue to go to these things. And, if the younger generation gets involved into it and picking up and liking the movies, then they're off to the races for sure. How do I think the Jags will do this season? I just spoke about that earlier. You just missed it. I think that they're going to go minimum 10-7. But I'm thinking maybe more 11-6. Maybe even 12-5. That'd be pretty sweet. Definitely think we'll win our division. At a minimum. All right. So that was from Sam. Thank you, Sam, on the movies. Right? I think that they're going to go... with the Paladin next. I guess that I don't know. Maybe it'll be totally different too. Maybe it won't even be any of those people, and they'll just do a whole new set with maybe a few returning. As to someone mentioning that Hugh Grant maybe was only interested in it for one round, maybe we never see that guy again, and then it's just new cast. We will have to see. I'm sure that whatever they make is going to be fun. I think that they did a good job on the first one, and I really think they can only improve. You would hope. That's probably famous last words for a lot of trilogies or sequels. But with D&D, it's different, yeah? Because you're not just relying on one plot. You have the foundation that provides you to put in any plot you want. So you can make a cool D&D story, and there's more than one way to make a cool D&D story, I guess is the point. So yeah, I think that they're going to expand and make a bunch of those movies, and whether they do it with individuals or they do another group or different groups, there will be more. This will be just the beginning of that. So thank you, Sam. This next question, we are moving through them. Dragonborn in your party next time. Provided they have the budget. Yes, that's true. Well, I mean, they've made good money so far on this one. I wonder how much of a share or how much kind of rather what revenue there is to be made in streaming, and if it will do better or the same. That'll be the real interesting thing, is the streaming numbers, and if people are rewatching it, because I'm probably going to rewatch it. A lot of people probably will too. This next question is from Gina. And Gina asks, I'm an introverted nerd, so I struggle with socializing at cons and events. Sometimes it prevents me from attending or staying longer. Any advice on how to overcome social anxiety and make meaningful connections with other fans? Well, I think everyone has some social anxiety to a certain extent. I would say first that you should congratulate yourself and take it as a positive that you're able to go to the cons in the first place, because I really relate to that on a deep level in terms of not wanting to go and do the thing. Maybe for different reasons. I don't have much anxiety, only because I just try to remind myself, and maybe this is helpful. Maybe this is the moment of advice that's coming. Advice incoming. Just, people are people. Yeah? Everybody, we're all the same thing. And we're all connected by the fact that, we don't know how much time we get in this place, and then we're just here and then we're gone. So that said, on that level, like, people are just people, and most of the time they're probably just as anxious as you are. I mean, at cons, nerds are introverted. That's the one thing too. When you said you're an introverted nerd, it's like, well, yeah. I mean, lots of nerds are introverted. I consider myself introverted, although a lot of people probably wouldn't. But I think it's just the nature of the outcasts, as it were, or at least were for maybe still to an extent, but not as bad as probably it was when I was younger, or even back before then. Kind of rambling. But I guess my point is that, like, I would give people the benefit of the doubt and give people the opportunity to be cool. Because a lot of times, if you give people the opportunity to be cool, they are cool. And so I would say just be yourself and lean into whatever the fandom is, right? So you focus on that, focus the conversations on that, and also maybe focus on like what you love about that thing, or what you know a lot about on that thing. Because when you do that, I think that when you speak passionate about something, it's already better than anything else you'd be saying. Just in the sense of its general delivery. Like, if I start talking about stuff that I really, really like or am passionate about, there's a major difference between me just talking in general. And so that can be very helpful, because if you're talking about the thing that you like, chances are good that you're going to smile more. You're going to seem friendlier and put off that kind of good energy. And so people pick up on that stuff and are attracted to that kind of stuff. And I would say to take pressure off of yourself as to a certain way that you need to behave. That would be number one. I think that you just have to be who you are, and then the people that want to hang out with you will hang out with you. And I think that you would be surprised. There are a lot of people that are probably that way. Somebody should make an app and maybe there is one. Please tell me, people in the chat, if you know. Oh, thank you very much for the donation there, Sarcasmo Rex. That's an awesome name and very appreciated. Thank you very much for the donation. That's very helpful and very cool of you. Thank you. So what are we talking about? Social anxiety. So be yourself. Just be who you are. And then other people that are that way would be attracted to that. Oh, I was saying we need an app. Maybe there is one, like a social anxiety app, where it's like you can color code and like put your status and stuff. And that'd be kind of perfect for cons. Celebrate the little accomplishments. Try breathing. That's good. That's good advice always. Breathing. It's simple and good. It's simple advice, but it's good advice because it's something we often forget. I'm a forgetter to breathe. My wife is actually very good at reminding me to, like, it's all right, just chill out, breathe. Because when you take that moment to just, you're okay. And, you know, hey, a lot of anime protagonists are, like, really introverted and socially anxious, so let's see what people are saying in chat. If you're old enough and not driving, a few drinks don't hurt. Oh, there you go. That's always a little, what do they say, a little liquid courage. Small talk about things that have in common greatly reduces that anxiety. Always a challenge to do that small talk unless you lean into your geekiness. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. And I think that in general, I think I said earlier, like, lean into the fandom, lean into who you are, because when you're talking about something that you're comfortable about, it's when you're talking about stuff you don't want to talk about that you get weird. When, you know, when you say stuff like, nobody wants to, you're having, like, you wouldn't just, like, randomly have a conversation with a random waiter, but if you have a waiter at your table, you're going to be speaking to that person and interacting with them, and stuff happens where they're like, enjoy your meal, and you're like, you too. That kind of stuff is just, you wouldn't do that if you were talking about something that you loved. That only happened because it's just some stupid social pleasantry. So I would say not to get caught up in all of that nonsense. Just focus on the fandom. Focus on the cool stuff. Just put yourself in a position where you're hanging around tables or people that are in that same kind of fandom. And that conversation will just happen naturally, I think. Don't be so hard on yourself. Yes, be proud of the geek that you are. Embrace the nerddom. Because that's what other people are doing. A billion years ago, the advice I got was to just let your own love fly. Those people out there are your tribe. You can't expect them to find you if you don't fly your flag. Good point. Interesting point. There could be somebody at the con just like you. And hey, maybe you start talking and that's what you relate to on. That's the thing where it's like, oh yeah, well, I never know what to say. And then the other person's like, oh, I never know what to say either. Oh, you have a friend now. They're multiplying. Let your geek flag fly. Get out there, Gina, and make some friends. You can do it. And honestly, you should be proud of yourself for getting out there in the first place. Because when the question presents itself in such a way where you're, you know, obviously sometimes you're unable to go for that reason, but you've been before. It's possible. You can do it. And hey, you listen to this show, so you're cool in my book. Thank you for the question, Gina. And thank you, chat, always, for your wonderful advice as well. See, this is the great thing about this podcast. It's not just my goofy old brain. We got a whole squad of D&D players here with their opinions. Take a more social friend. That can help too. Oh yeah, there you go. Get yourself somebody who's a talker like me. Let them do all of that stuff, and then you can just say what you want to. That's important. That's how Rigsby is. Rigsby doesn't talk as much as me. Obviously, I don't know that anybody talks as much as me. But when Rigsby talks, it's like, oh, well, wait a second, hold on. This is probably important because he doesn't talk very much. So yeah, put yourself in a situation where you're like that. And just remember, depression is merely anger without the enthusiasm. Yeah, heard that. And also, anger is just like outward depression, yeah? It's just outward anger versus inward anger. Inward anger. Whatever that means. Thank you, Gina. Moving right along. We're going up to question number 4. This one's about monsters. So let's get into it. This one's from Mike. Mike asks, we've all done campaigns around vampires and dragons and drow. Oh my. But is there any unique or underutilized monster you think would make for a great center to base a campaign around? Also, how would you use them in the campaign? I'm totally not trying to steal ideas for my own upcoming campaign. Yeah, of course, obviously. You've already got all that planned out and ready to go. I made some notes on this. Indeed. So prepared this week, it's crazy. Doppelgangers. ooze, gelatinous cubes. Maybe not a whole campaign. Quicklings. Quicklings are a really cool enemy, I think. But doppelgangers was first. And the more that I think about it, the cooler that is. And also, don't Rakshasa? Say the word. Rakshasa? They can turn into anything, right? So that would be cool. Rust monsters. Yeah, I thought of that. I didn't have it on the list, but I did think of rust monsters earlier. Intellect Devourer. That's the second Intellect Devourer I've seen. Mr. Backward Paws. Yeah, Rakshasa. They can turn into anything, right? They can be anything. That's really where I was going with Doppelganger. I think that idea is kind of cool because your players might not even know what the real thing is until halfway through the campaign. They might think that they're chasing some crazy old woman when it's just some doppelganger. The cool thing that you could do with doppelgangers, because they can, I don't know what their limitations are in terms of what they can turn into, but you could, with that, have two villains that exist, but it's really only one villain. That'd be pretty fun. I also made a note, the party themselves, not to be too edgelordy, but on the note of doppelgangers, it'd be pretty cool to figure out some way to put them in some mirror world or something. Like some sort of a Stranger Things scenario where something they do in this world immediately affects the other world. Mirror world stuff is always crazy. Any fey creature? End up with a great political game versus just a hack and slash with doppelganger Rakshasa changeling. Invisible stalkers, yes. And displacer beasts, but you wouldn't want to base a whole campaign around that. I think any of those here's what I would do, honestly. Rather than, first of all, you're welcome to any of those ideas just thrown out there. But I used to do this. I would just go through the monster manual and just kind of let your mind wander as you're kind of flipping through it. And think about what kind of story you would want to accomplish. And then just see if you can find something visually that makes a connection there. And then you can just do all of the numbers and stuff later. I think that's one cool way to do it. I found a lot of cool stuff in the monster manual by just browsing through it and being like, oh, wait a minute, what's this? Because if you flip through it enough, what you know already. You don't need to read about the bugbear. You know about the bugbear. But who's this guy? You've probably seen him a bunch, but maybe you never really looked into it. So I think that just browsing the monster manual in general would probably be some solid advice for that, to just kind of see what's in there. And also homebrew monsters. I made a note of that too, because there's a lot of crazy cool homebrew stuff online. So you might be able to find something on there. I know that, I don't know if River mentioned it in the chat, I was thinking about the False Hydra too. I don't know if you know much about the False Hydra, Mike, but I would look it up. I don't want to talk about it yet, only because I still want to answer that question and really get into the False Hydra. But I would look that up, Mike, because that's a real fun, unique monster. You could do a cult trying to harness the power of displacer beasts. The leader is a displacer priest. Oh man, I like it. The bards are here. The monster manual is a template. Yes. Love home brewing. If it doesn't exist, you can always make it. Yep. And always remember that too. This is just a skeleton, this game. All of the content, all of the meat, all of the meaningful story, and the powerful words is all you and your party. So Even if you make something up, do it. Homebrew something. Make up your own monster. Nothing's more unique than that. Something that you just came up with your brain. You can also talk to ChatGPT and Bard, by the way, funny enough. I wonder if that's going to ultimately help me in search results and SEO because of bardadvice and the fact that Google's AI is called Bard. I've been speaking to Bard lately. I'd recommend doing that, folks, even if you don't feel like you necessarily can glean anything or gain anything from it. It's going to become more and more required, or maybe not necessary, but it'll definitely be very helpful, I think, in the next several years for you to know at least just how to have kind of a conversation with the AI. I've been talking to GPT for several months, and I think I've gotten better at prompting and getting things out of it. You know, that's a new job, actually, these days, is prompt engineer. That'll be the thing that's hiring. And they'll only need one to oversee the production that was done by 10 to 20 people. Anyway, totally different conversation. Homebrew stuff. That's, when in doubt, homebrew. But any of the other stuff I mentioned, I think would be kind of cool too. Any creature can be turned into a skeleton or a zombie for an undead campaign. Ooh, that's good point there. That's a good one. If you ever want to make like a zombie goose campaign. Zombie geese? Don't know. Don't know if I could think of a scarier thing. At least not right now. Dinosaurs? Dinosaurs are tried and true. Homebrew an AI monster that can create whatever monster to counter that PC using meta-knowledge. Yikes, that's a really scary thing. Can we homebrew that? Let's make that a thing, Chris. Wow, what a nightmare that is. It's just, we're going to sit ghost geese. Still less terrifying than a Canada goose. Probably true. Birds scare the hell out of me in general, but the geese they're just so big. Hey geese, why are you so big? Stop doing that. Get smaller. Hopefully that gives you some sort of an answer and direction, Mike. But, as I said, when in doubt, homebrew. Whether it's your own or looking online. Thank you for the question. This next question, I think... Oh yeah, I know. This next question is from Zach. And Zach asks, do you have a favorite Pokemon? And on that same note, do you have a favorite Pokemon game? Thank you for the question, Zach. I do have favorite Pokemon. In fact, while I was looking for images of the Pokemon and how I would put that together, I actually found an image that has 4 of my top 5 in it. So we can talk about that briefly in terms of... Now, I will say... I really didn't play too much after the first gen. That's not totally true. I played into maybe 2, 3, but then I haven't played a Pokemon game in a really, really, really long time. That said, my favorite Pokemon, in order, by the way, if we want to do that, are circled here on this image. We've got Bulbasaur at number 1. I picked Bulbasaur always. He was my starter. He's the best. Gengar at 2, Snorlax at 3, Psyduck at 4, and Blastoise, who's not on here, at 5th. Now, you might notice all of those are first gen, and that's not to say that there aren't any other Pokemon that I like from other generations, because there are some cool ones that I like, but those are my favorite. And that's what you asked. Although you didn't ask for top 5, but that's what you got. So those are my faves. And I guess that I'd have to say, interestingly enough, I think that my favorite game was Leaf Green, which is not first gen, right? That's like second or third, because it's... Oh, that's Mudkip, yeah? So that's like 3rd gen? Not sure. Cubone is underrated, yeah. That whole story is super sad. All of that weird stuff going on with Lavender Town and that crazy music. It's Gen 3, but it's Kanto. Right. So it is the Kanto region. Yeah. I really like that one. I was very fortunate in childhood to get Pokemon pretty much when it came out. So I think that I got blue and my cousin got red. And man, we played the hell out of those games. I played that game so much. And then that was back in the day before the Game Boy's background was backlit. So you had to have like a light on the Game Boy if you were using it like in the car or in the dark at all. You got Bluetooth, Squirtle. Yeah, I was never that big of a... I mean, Squirtle's okay. And hey, you need Squirtle to get to Blastoise, so... But I always loved Bulbasaur. I just thought that he was so cool. It was like... my 9-year-old brain couldn't handle it. I was like, what is this? He's like a plant dog. How do you not love that guy? He's so cool. And then also, he evolves into Venusaur, and from what I understand, Venusaur is still like top tier when you're talking about competitive play. So, Bulbasaur, keep calm and choose Bulbasaur. In our epic level adventures, Avram and the crew battled 2 shadow dragons that immediately came back as shadow Dracoliches. Has to kill them again. And they were just the Demon Lord's minions. Yikes. You got a lot going on over there, Avram. Bulbasaur is technically the best starter in Gen 1. Venusaur crushed most of the gyms in the Elite Four. Yeah, dude. And by the way, isn't Bulbasaur... Does Bulbasaur kill Brock easily? Because grass is effective against rock, yeah? Don't you just beat the crap out of Brock? I think that maybe there's probably some of that tied up into it too, where I was just... Yeah, that was a part of it too, because Brock's the first gym. So I just walked up in there and was just like, oh, and I think also that I leveled a bit higher than I probably needed to before I got to it. So then when I got to the gym, I just like waxed him and then was like, oh, Bulbasaur's the jam. Just get to Razor Leaf. You're good to go, dude. Hyper Beam? Come on, dude. Forget about it. Pokemon's so fun. It'd be really fun to play it'd be fun to play a Pokemon D&D campaign. Be interesting. Because you would have your own person as well. Bulbasaur deals with the first 3 gyms easy and resists the 4th. Yep, it was a pretty easy goings early game for the Bulbasaur choosers. For us, the fans of the Solar Beam, not Hyper Beam. I don't know why I said Hyper Beam. Solar Beam. If only we knew someone that meshed systems into D&D. Yeah, that'd be us. And we have done a Pokemon edition, although we based that off of the competitive Pokemon that people still play, like online. The Pokemon Stadium, as it were. Oh, and we didn't even talk about those games, right? We were just talking about versions of the boilerplate, I guess you'd say, the standard Pokemon. But, dude, Pokemon Snap? Hours. Days, even. I put into that game. Holy crap, man. Pokemon Snap was so cool. And then the first time you, like, knock the rocks down and discover all the secrets. And, oh, man. Pokemon Stadium on 64. I loved Snap maybe even more. And you know what else game was real fun? was Pokemon Pinball. And it had a space for a AA battery you could put in it because it rumbled. The stadium games were brutal. Definitely. Bob, my first DM when we started 24 years ago, killed one of my PCs with Pikachu. Man, the Rumble Pack. Yeah, man. Which was essentially just, it just vibrated. You got him you could get him in the back of the N64s. Dude, I'll do you one better. I'll see the Rumble Pack and I'll raise you the expansion pack that was necessary on the 64 to play more than 2 players on Perfect Dark. But when I tell you, if you used said expansion pack for the N64 so that you could indeed play with more than 2 players on Perfect Dark, you were going to have a really fun time. Because you could play with 3 or 4 of your friends and make sims that you could fight against. And you could make a bunch of them too. You could set it up to where it was like 4 on 6 and stuff. Oh man, some of the most fun in my gaming youth, in my youth gaming memory time was Perfect Dark. It was 4 megabytes more RAM. Wow. That is yikes. GoldenEye, of course, was great, a staple. But I think I played Perfect Dark more, likely because of The Sims. Because you could play against the computer in GoldenEye, but it was still pretty limited. In Perfect Dark, you could establish it where it was like you and your friends versus the other ones. And I think you could have up to 6 or 8 total people in the game. So whether that was, like 4 people and 4 computers or 2 people and 6 computers. Super cool. Games have come a long way. Yeah, I know. I was thinking that recently when I was playing 2K because, y'all, I've been playing basketball video games since NBA Live 95 and stuff, like NBA Jam back in the day. And yeah. Now, 2K is not the greatest example because there hasn't been that giant of an advancement in the last decade or so in terms of how those games play and operate. But certainly in comparison to the games of yore, the games from our childhood like NFL Blitz and NBA Street, those games were so fun. GoldenEye is on Xbox Game Pass. Yeah, and I have GoldenEye on my Switch. Because it's on the Switch. If you have the Nintendo Pass or whatever for the year, GoldenEye's on there. Pretty cool. Man, we really got caught up talking about video games because of the Pokemon. Not that I'm complaining. But hopefully that gives you your answer, Zach, for your Pokemon question. We got to get moving because I've got some more things that I wanted to discuss. Let's move on. This next question is from Chris. Of course. And Chris asks, I just had a thought, and this may be more for experienced players, but during character creation, how does it sound to have your group pick a number of things from a hat, such as race, class, gender, that are written on strips of paper? I think it'd be pretty interesting to see how players played different things, getting them out of a comfort zone. Just my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Well, first of all, thank you for the question. Second of all, as someone who has drawn characters out of a hat, I'm for it. Now, I'll say that in my case, I got kind of lucky because most of my experience prior to playing as Verena, because for those of you who don't know, if you've not seen the We Play, the first episode of the We Play is called The Draft, where that is what we did. We picked characters from a hat. So it was very random as to who we were going to get. I drew a barbarian rogue. So that would be Verena. And while I don't have too much experience roguing, I got a lot of barbarian experience. And just kind of tanking and DPR in general, I've done a lot of that. Now, I've done my share of support, and rangers are fun for me, druids, but obviously bards. But I'd say it's probably 60 to 70% of my player career in D&D has been like melee, tank, fighter, barb. So it wasn't that out of my comfort zone. It probably would have been a lot more out of my comfort zone had I gotten like a wizard or a sorcerer or something. But I think that overall it is good because there were probably some choices that I wouldn't have made myself. And to your point, I do think that it's good for experienced players, if for nothing else than to give them sort of a new take on what they already love. Because, you know, you play, not to say that it's boring, but there can be lulls in the D&D universe as to kind of being bored of doing the same old thing. And this is a great example of something really easy that you can do that can really make a big change in the game. Because now you've got somebody like me who's like, oh shit, now I'm a sorcerer. So now I got to figure out how to sorcerer. And it becomes more of a challenge for me. And I think that it can also lend itself to cool stuff happening in game simply because someone like me who's never played as a sorcerer, I mean, I don't think I've ever been a sorcerer. Huh. I've been a wizard, been a warlock. I don't think I've ever been a sorcerer. And I totally just lost my train of thought because of that. Her drug of choice was indeed called Zork. Yes. It was Ethan's Realm's version of cocaine. Actually, I think he found a stat block for it somewhere online. Somewhere in Homebrew. You can find it in Homebrew if it doesn't exist. Somebody made it. Somewhere. It's like D&D's. You always play the characters the same that you draw up yourself if they're for the same type of character. You always play the characters the same. Yes, you're not wrong about that. That's true. That's what I was going to say. Somebody like me who's never played as a sorcerer might do some stuff that you've never seen somebody do, only because, or I should say that you've never seen a sorcerer do, simply because the person that's playing it's never done it and is approaching it from a totally different angle. So that can be fun for the DM as well. And also, yes, to your point, Pirate, the characters, usually the characters you draw up, you're going to play the same. And I'm guilty of that, right? I'm sure that you could line up a couple of my fighters or rangers over the years, and it's like, well, this is the same. This is the same character with just a different skin or whatever. Whereas somebody like Augustus Montgomery was pretty out of my comfort zone because he wasn't much for damage. And in fact, I think that most of his contribution to the party was with RP more than any actual combat. So Augustus Montgomery was actually something that I probably never would have played myself. I likely would have never built a character like that. Certainly not one based so heavily around healing. Like a doctor, I don't think that I would have made. Yeah, maybe it's just like it's calling. It's telling me to do like sorcerer, make a sorcerer that focuses on healing spells. I don't know. Maybe I should. Just to have an awesome inflict wounds sork build. Oh my god, that sounds so vicious. If I were going to make a sorcerer, I would want to make one from 3-5. I'd want to do maybe a blood magus or something similar. There's a lot of really cool prestige classes in books like The Complete Arcane and Player's Handbook 2, Hexblades. Well, that's like a standard now, right? The Hexblade Warlock? No, I'm not thinking Hexblades. Hexblade was a prestige class. I was thinking Duskblades. and beguilers. Beguilers are in the PHP too. I know way too much about D&D. All right, so thank you for the question. I just knee-jerk said that. I don't know if we're even done, but I think we're done. I think it's a great idea. I encourage other people to do it. Randomize that stuff. Hey, D&D, are you a D&D player? Is your game getting stale? Try something new. Put stuff in a hat. And then have everybody draw out, and it's random. And then this is what you get. That'd be really fun, too, I think, for the DM, if the DM were the one that was kind of in charge of putting the stuff in the hat. Because you could sort of lead their hand a bit as to, well, you know... Or what would be kind of fun too, and to add on to that experiment with an additional twist, is that maybe it's all the same character. So then everybody draws the same character, right, in terms of the parameters, but then we see how they all play it differently. So it's like, okay, well, everybody's a lawful good gnome bard. And then you get to see 5 players all play that differently. So... a D&D completely random edition. Funny you mentioned that. This weekend's episode might end up being that. That's not what it's called, but you'll see on Sunday. But thanks for the question, Chris. Always, as usual, happy to have you on, Chris. This next question is from a Stephanie or a Steph. There was another handle requested or noted, although I don't know if my mother would approve of me calling you that. So we're just going to go with Steph or Stephanie. There was lots of nice praise about there was lots of flattery and much appreciated. Thank you for watching the show. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. But let's get into your question, because I'm interested to see how we can help. My husband grew up in a military family. A miliary family. We're already with typos on the first sentence. Let's start this over. Steph asks, my husband grew up in a military family with both parents in, and a common thing wherever they were stationed, there were usually people to play D&D with. He grew up playing, and I want to do that for our kids. Cool, Mom. It would most likely be a few adults and 4 kids in the 10 to 12 age range playing. My brother-in-law has agreed to DM for the first time. Do you have any recommendations on where to start? Like one-shot versus campaign, or a good all-around starter to run? My husband has already walked us through setting up character sheets. The Cadwallader Wright episode cracked me up with the similarities to the character I came up with. Oh, Justin will be happy to hear that. I've read the PHB and skimmed through some of the other books. Any suggestions or advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for the question, Steph. Glad to hear that you are diving into the game. It's a hoot and a holler. I think you'll have a real fun time. So I made some notes here, and ultimately the short answer to your question is I think you do a homebrew one shot. But we'll get into why I say that. So what I would do in your situation is there's pros and cons, okay? I would, in my opinion, do a homebrew one-shot just because I think that it gives you more control. I'm not sure if this person that's DMing is already experienced in DMing, because if that's the case, then homebrew gets even more of a vote from me. If they already know what they're doing, then definitely homebrew. But I wrote that you'll have enough to worry about without having to follow a complicated story. So, like with modules, I put that one of the pros to modules is that, especially for beginners, is that they usually try to create scenarios that will teach. So, I mean, I certainly would try and build a module that way if it was, for characters levels 1 to 3 or whatever. You would probably want to create a situation where there's, I noted here, there may be puzzles. They may create puzzles or battles that can be conquered in multiple ways, which is, it's good because it lets the players stretch their legs mechanically in terms of figuring out what everything is. And hey, maybe that might be the move, considering the size of the group, is to just do something that is pre-written. So There's argument that if the story's pre-written, then the DM and the players have to they don't have to worry so much about the story because it's kind of just there in the background, and then they're just focused on the mechanics. But the reason that I say homebrew is that homebrew can make it more. Homebrew's just better. That's really what it is. Homebrew's the way, River says. I have to agree. I hearken back a lot to Gygax himself being quoted as saying the trick is that we can never let the players know they don't need the rules. You certainly don't need their stories. So I think that I would say this. I think that a module will be more convenient, probably maybe a little easier to follow. But I think that a homebrew will be more rewarding. And in particular, with the kids, I think that a homebrew, if the DM knows what they're doing or has some semblance of what they're doing when it comes to DMing, definitely do homebrew. Because the homebrew stories are the ones that keep you coming back, in my opinion. Will they send the Pinkertons if we homebrew? I don't think we've reached that level yet. I don't think they've sent out any of the Pinkertons for somebody homebrewing, although, hey, that might be the next thing. We never know. Thank you. There's the proper quote. The secret we should never let the game masters know is that they don't need any rules. That's one Gary Gygax himself. I mean, he was aware the game that he, not single-handedly, but had a large part in creating. The game that he made. He was aware. It's simply a skeleton. It's just there for you to get started. The real masterpiece is in your head and in your imaginations. And on that note, another point for homebrew, because when the kids see, wait a minute, Uncle Joe made this himself, that's a different thing. Right? It's different than just like, oh yeah, so we bought this thing at the store and we're playing this thing. It's a totally different thing if it's just like, oh yeah, well, yeah, Uncle Jim Joe made it up. Isn't that cool? And then it's like, whoa. And then there's this spark of like, wait a minute. I can do this. So yeah, the more I talk about it and the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking homebrew. Do the homebrew. Do a one-shot. Definitely a one-shot above a campaign, only because, like, you know, you don't want the stakes too high. You'd hate for one of these kids to like have their character die, and then they have to make a new one for next week. That's no fun. Whereas, you know, with a one-shot, you don't necessarily have to live for the story to be rewarding and cool. As opposed to like an ongoing campaign where it's like, let's make sure everybody stays alive. It's less, I think, traumatic. It's less of a loss. It's less stakes when it's a one-shot. So I recommend one-shot. I let them choose what they want to do and interact with lore and things. Then I want them to find ties in the main story quest. They don't feel railroaded that way. Steer the chaos and watch the carnage. Yep. Steering the chaos. We've talked about that before. So I hope that gives you some sort of a direction, Stephanie. That's what I would do. I would do a homebrew one-shot. I think that that's the recipe for success, both in enjoying the game and encouraging later play. Ravenloft Edition. That's true. And Diablo Edition. Okay. I'm listening. I'm hearing you. I've tried to figure out a way to do 40K. Yeah, I just feel like that needs to happen. Well, thank you for the question, Steph. I hope that gives you some direction. Go forth and roll 20s and homebrew some cool stuff. Some cool, memorable stories. So we are out of questions. But as I mentioned at the top, there is something that I received that I would like to go over that I think is really interesting. So, speaking of interesting, it's going to be interesting how this works itself out if I've done this properly. So, let's go to It's not really a follow-up, but let's talk about it. Okay, here we go. So this is from Lee. And Lee neither really asks nor tells. I guess just tells. Let's just read it here. Lee says, not really a question or follow-up, just wanted to share some fun. I was listening to episode 19, where you were talking about tracking player stats / how much damage / how much injuries they take over the course of the scenario, and wanted to share what we do. Our group has words of the session that we write down and record. They are sometimes what is said by a player or something a character does. They don't really make much sense outside of the group, but they are a fun thing to end the session on. Does anyone have any words of the session? And if you have a few groups that play who know each other, it's fun to post each other's words to the other group and have them guess what chaos happened in the other group. Here are a few examples. Oh man, these are so fun. I'm really excited to go through these. All right. How do you flank a trap door? Flaming bat out of hell. Viscera bobsleigh. Vampiric death screams. New band. It's a good band name. Top of the coffins. 1-800-Vengeance. I inhale the dead. that one might be my favorite. Were it not for stealthiest lampshade in the West. Paralyzed tactical nuke. Roll 36d6. It's raining flamethrowers. Can we take a group photo in this in the Gore Fest? Does dancing on a grave count as an action? That should be a t-shirt. And Newton's Cradle of Pain, seduce me. Now, if you're just joining us, you might think that I've just had a stroke. Don't worry. I was just reading through some words of the session from a friend of the pod, Lee, who sent those in. I think that's hilarious. I've not probably done those that organized before, but most certainly have we over the years. You got callbacks you go to, things that you remember from stuff that was said. It's just some of those crazy questions. In fact, as I was going through those, not only just now, but earlier when I got the email, it occurs to me that you could create a whole series on that, whether it was a video series, or like you could maybe put together a book, like an anthology of just that, and that would be hilarious. D&D people, I think, would buy that book and read it. I would. If there was a whole book of those, that'd be a great bathroom book too, man. Just like, hey, here's some funny, crazy D&D stuff with no context necessary, really, for you to see how funny it is. And I definitely think Stealthiest Lampshade in the West that's good stuff. I want to know what's happening there. Here's one from Bean. My horse isn't racist. I don't know why you would ever need to say that, but D&D, that's the thing about D&D. It's almost the catch-all for all of the nonsense, where it's all the non sequiturs are here. It's just like, man, that's a thing that you would never say. Funny enough, George Carlin used to have a bit where he was like, here's things someone's never said. And one of them was like, hand me that piano. Just like really random, weird stuff. But I will say, knowing what I know now about D&D, I'm not sure if those things hadn't been said before. Who knows what's said with... I make detailed session notes for my games with the idea of turning it into an actual story. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really cool thing that you're doing, Lee, and I think that everybody should do that. I thought that you were going to say something different than what you said, and I'm happy that this is what it was. I should also note, by the way, that you can't see it on the text that I put up, but each of those things obviously were from different sessions. Maybe not necessarily different sessions, but each of those things were kind of independent thoughts. Some of them occurred during the same session. Others were on their own separate sessions, but I think that's a great idea. I think that's hilarious. I mean, there's so much funny in that paragraph, and it's just like, I mean, based on the dates that are noted in the email, looks like only over the course of a couple of months that a lot of these were, that a lot of these came to be. So this is really funny stuff. Oh, geez, let's see. We've got people in chat sharing theirs. Where's my finger? That's an interesting thing that you find yourself asking. Nick Fury, Blarney, Quandle, Flu. Okay. If children weren't so tasty, they wouldn't be in pies. Oh, man. Session words. I dig it. I really like it. I would encourage others to do it. And I would encourage you to keep doing it because, man, you just can't buy funny like that. They say the real stuff's the funniest stuff. That's the funny stuff that happens when you and your friends are just hanging around playing D&D, you know? I'm going to turn you all into combat butterflies. All right, well, combat butterflies, that is definitely a band, right? How could that not be? Actually, Combat Butterflies is Vampiric Death Scream's debut album. We are Vampiric Death Screams, and this is Combat Butterflies. Death metal, right? For sure. Black metal. Hardcore screaming crazy. What's the worst that could happen? We're basically gods, right? Yeah, one from my campaign that I always remember, and this didn't even happen in game. This happened after the fact when we were telling the story, but yeah, I've mentioned it before with the D20 Modern campaign when we were supposed to rob the casino. It was like, our buddy that hadn't played with us that night asked us, like, so how did it go? We were like, well, we were supposed to get in, get out, nobody gets hurt, and we ended up blowing up a city block. And the friend's response was like, that sounds about right. That sounds about D&D. So, yikes. We already did it again, gang. We already burned through hour 23 of Bard Advice. Episode 23 is no more. We did it. We're on the other side of it, gang. Can you believe it? I certainly can't. George Carlin as a character would be amazing. Definitely with powerful mockery. Oh yeah, dude. You know that he's like a College of Whispers bard. 100%. George would just like be slicing people with words. So how long until it turns into a 90-minute podcast? Yeesh, I don't know. I don't think I could handle that. Well, geez, I mean, we're kind of getting there already. I guess maybe if you don't say anything. Maybe I'll just ramble on. Any chance in the future of adding official lyrics to your tracks on Spotify/Genius? You know, I should do that. Some of my stuff's on Genius. I don't know how that works. Can anybody just put them on there? I mean, if they can, I will. I will say that I do have the lyric video for Attack of Opportunity. Although it may not be the most friendly to read. It'd probably be better to just get the lyrics to my stuff onto Genius or AZ Lyrics or something. But only 46 episodes to go until we can celebrate. 46? Oh, so we have a 50th episode? That'd be fun. Well, we can just celebrate whenever we want. How about we celebrate on episode 32? We'll be like, we did it. Here we are. And hey, that works out because it's the inversion of this episode. So on 32, we'll reconvene. We'll meet back up here on episode 32 and be like, hey, remember that time back on episode 23 when we were talking about this great reward for 32? This is where we got to be. This is what happens, I think, when you just let me keep talking. So, love some more D&D raps. I'm working on it. I'm working on my third album. Organized Lightning. And if you've ever played D&D but you want to get in, is there a way to play a one-player scenario? I did speak about that a little bit briefly last week. There are solo options. In fact, if you go, Earl, to my last week's episode, there is a link for there's a link on that episode in the description on how to do solo play if you want to set that up. So check it out. An intro and outro song for the show. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It is odd, I guess, you would think that Bard Advice of any podcast would have songs, would have music on the front end. Anyway, thanks all for hanging out this evening. Just a reminder before we go, send all questions and queries and concerns and comments and complaints to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like Bardadvice. Get your merch at manshorts.com. And if you want to contribute to my music, do so at Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, at Yazik. I will be back next week, same Bard time, same Bard channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio for this podcast will be available tomorrow, Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend, and we will see you next time.